Billionaire boss ignored his maid for months until one text made him lose control. Emma Rodriguez had been working at the Ashford estate for exactly 7 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days when she realized she'd become invisible. Not metaphorically, she'd always known domestic staff occupied a peculiar space in wealthy households, seen but not really noticed. No, this was different. Her employer, Alexander Ashford, had perfected the art of looking straight through her as if she were made of glass. She remembered the day she'd been hired, how he'd barely glanced up from his laptop during the brief interview conducted mostly by his assistant. "Fine," he'd said, his voice clipped and distant. "Start Monday." That was the extent of their first conversation. In the months that followed, their interactions consisted of his occasional nods when passing in the hallway and her quiet, "Good morning, Mr. Ashford," which he never acknowledged. Emma told herself it didn't matter. The job paid well, far better than her previous position at the hotel downtown, and the money went straight to her mother's medical bills. Stage 3 breast cancer didn't care about hurt feelings or bruised egos. Every morning, Emma woke up in the small staff quarters on the 3rd floor of the mansion, reminded herself why she was here, and got to work. The Ashford estate sprawled across 5 acres in the Connecticut countryside, a modern architectural marvel of glass and steel that appeared in design magazines. Emma maintained the main house, 12,000 square feet that Alexander inhabited like a ghost. He spent most days locked in his study, emerging only for coffee she'd leave outside his door and the occasional meal he'd eat alone in the dining room, scrolling through his phone. She learned his patterns. Coffee at 6:30, black with 1 sugar. Fresh towels in his bathroom Monday and Thursday. He preferred his office undisturbed but wouldn't object if she cleaned it before 8 in the morning. He had conference calls at 10. Lunch he usually skipped. He worked until midnight most nights, sometimes later. She knew all of this not because they'd ever discussed it, but because after 7 months of silence, observation became her primary language. Other staff members came and went, a landscaping crew on Tuesdays, a chef who prepared meals 3 times a week that Alexander rarely ate, a personal trainer who visited every morning at 5. Emma was the constant, the only person who truly saw how he lived. And what she saw worried her more than she wanted to admit. Alexander Ashford, tech billionaire and founder of Ashford Dynamics, worked himself to exhaustion. She'd find coffee cups scattered around his office, evidence of all-nighters. The meals she prepared often returned to the kitchen untouched. She'd hear him on phone calls, his voice tight with stress, sometimes edging toward anger, though never directed at her. She wasn't significant enough to warrant his anger. Emma had read about him before taking the job, of course. Everyone had. The boy genius who'd started coding at 12, dropped out of MIT to launch his first company at 19, and sold it for $200 million by 23. Ashford Dynamics, his current venture, had revolutionized cloud computing infrastructure and was valued at over $12 billion. At 34, he was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. The articles painted him as driven, brilliant, ruthlessly focused. They showed pictures of him at tech conferences, accepting awards, gracing the covers of Forbes and Fortune. But those photos showed a different man than the one Emma encountered daily. The Alexander Ashford in magazines smiled, made eye contact, seemed present. The Alexander Ashford who lived in this vast, empty house was hollow. A shell going through motions. She wanted to say something. On the mornings when she noticed he'd worn the same clothes 2 days running, or when she found him asleep at his desk, or when she heard him on the phone with what sounded like his sister, his voice breaking with exhaustion, Emma wanted to break her silence. But what would she say? And why would he listen? She was the maid, after all. Furniture with a pulse. So she did the only thing she could. She tried to make his environment better. She learned that he worked more productively with certain lighting, so she adjusted the smart home settings. She noticed he rubbed his temples during afternoon calls, so she started leaving water bottles and Advil discreetly nearby. When she realized he wasn't eating the elaborate meals the chef prepared, she began making simple comfort food, a grilled cheese sandwich, tomato soup, mac and cheese, and leaving it where he'd find it. He never said thank you. He never said anything. But the plates came back empty, and that felt like something. Emma's roommate from college, Sophia, called these small acts emotional labor for people who don't deserve it. They'd met for coffee one Sunday, Emma's only day off, and she'd made the mistake of mentioning her employer. "He doesn't even acknowledge you exist," Sophia had said, incredulous. "Emma, that's dehumanizing." "It's just how rich people are sometimes," Emma had replied, though she didn't quite believe it. She'd worked for wealthy families before. Some were kind, some were demanding, some were oblivious. But she'd never encountered someone quite like Alexander Ashford, someone who seemed to be deliberately trying to disappear from his own life. "You're too good for this," Sophia had said, squeezing her hand. "You deserve to work somewhere where people see you." But Emma couldn't leave, not with her mother's next round of treatment approaching. The job paid too well, and the benefits were excellent. So she returned to the estate, to her invisible existence, and told herself that being unseen was a small price to pay for her mother's health. What Emma didn't know, couldn't know, was that Alexander Ashford noticed far more than she realized. He knew about the lighting changes, the strategically placed Advil, the comfort food that appeared when he needed it most. He noticed everything, in fact, because in a life carefully constructed to avoid genuine human connection, Emma Rodriguez had become an anomaly. A presence that both soothed and disturbed him in equal measure. And he hated himself for it. The text message arrived at 2:47 in the morning on a Tuesday in late September. Emma's phone buzzed on her nightstand, pulling her from restless sleep. Her mother's hospital had her number programmed into the alert system, and every notification sent her heart racing. But when she grabbed the phone, squinting at the bright screen, she saw it wasn't from the hospital. It was from an unknown number with a Connecticut area code. The message was short: "Kitchen. Please." She sat up, confused. Then she realized it had to be him. Alexander Ashford. In 7 months, he'd never texted her. He'd never asked her for anything directly. He simply existed in his parallel universe, and she moved around him like a satellite. Emma grabbed her robe and hurried downstairs, her mind cycling through possibilities. Was something wrong? Was he sick? Had there been an emergency? The house was dark except for a dim light coming from the kitchen. When she rounded the corner, she found Alexander sitting at the marble island, still in his suit from the previous day, his tie loosened and his head in his hands. "Mr. Ashford." Her voice came out uncertain. "Is everything all right?" He looked up, and Emma's breath caught. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face drawn. He looked like a man who'd been hollowed out and was only now realizing it. "I don't," he started, then stopped. His voice was rough, unused to vulnerability. "I can't do this anymore." Emma stood frozen. In all her months here, they'd barely exchanged 50 words total. Now he was sitting in his kitchen at 3 in the morning looking like his world was ending, and she had no idea what to do. "Can't do what?" she asked gently, moving closer but maintaining a respectful distance. "Any of it." He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything and nothing. "The company. The pressure. The constant—" He broke off, running his hands through his hair. "I had a panic attack during a board meeting today. Full on, couldn't breathe, thought I was dying. My CFO had to call a recess. 34 years old, $12 billion, and I'm falling apart in front of my executives." Emma pulled out the stool across from him and sat down. Protocol be damned. He clearly needed someone, anyone, to listen. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "That sounds terrifying." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You know what the worst part is? This is the first real conversation I've had with another human being in months. I mean really had, not just performance and strategy and networking. I'm sitting in my kitchen at 3 in the morning talking to my maid because I literally have no one else." The word stung, maid, but Emma pushed past it. "What about friends? Family? Friends?" He shook his head. "I haven't had real friends since before I sold my first company. Just people who want something. Investment capital, connections, favors. My sister tries, but she has her own life in California. My parents—" He stopped. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 26, right after Ashford Dynamics started taking off." "I'm so sorry," Emma said, meaning it. "Everyone's sorry," Sorry doesn't bring them back. Sorry doesn't make the company run itself. Sorry doesn't—" His voice cracked. "I built all of this because my dad always believed I could do something meaningful. Change the world, he used to say. And I did, I guess. But now I'm trapped in the thing I built, and I can't remember why any of it mattered." Emma sat quietly, letting him talk. She'd learned this from sitting with her mother during chemo sessions. Sometimes people just needed to release the words they'd been holding. "You want to know something pathetic?" Alexander continued. "The only time I feel remotely human is when I find those sandwiches you leave. The grilled cheese, the soup. Someone actually thinking about what I might need rather than what they need from me. I know you probably think I don't notice anything, but I notice. I notice everything you do." Emma's heart stuttered. "You notice?" "Of course I notice. The lighting changes. The way you figured out I get migraines in the afternoon. How you stopped asking me questions because you realized I couldn't handle conversation. You're probably the most considerate person in my life, and I don't even really know you." He met her eyes for the first time, really looked at her. "I don't know anything about you. Your last name is Rodriguez. You're on the employee roster. That's it. And that makes me a terrible person, doesn't it?" "You're not terrible," Emma said softly. "You're exhausted. There's a difference. Why are you being kind to me? I've ignored you for 7 months." "Because you look like you need kindness right now," Emma replied. "And because I understand what it's like to feel like you're drowning." Something shifted in his expression. "Tell me something about you. Please. Something real." Emma hesitated. But his desperation was palpable, and she found herself answering. "My mother has cancer. Stage 3 breast cancer. That's why I took this job. The salary and benefits are good enough to cover her treatment. She's all I have. My dad left when I was 10, and I'm an only child. So I get it, feeling alone even when you're surrounded by people." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more human. "Is she going to be okay?" "I hope so. The doctors are optimistic about this new treatment protocol. But it's expensive, and she can't work anymore, so—" Emma shrugged. "I do what I have to do. And you still have the energy to take care of someone like me. Someone who doesn't even acknowledge your existence." "You're acknowledging it now," Emma pointed out. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Emma realized she'd never seen him smile before. "I am, aren't I?" "Probably too late, though. You probably think I'm—" "I think you're having a really hard time," Emma interrupted. "And I think you need help. Real help, not just someone making you sandwiches." "Are you suggesting therapy?" There was a hint of humor in his voice now. "I'm suggesting you can't keep going the way you've been going. Something has to change, or—" She stopped, but he finished the thought. "Or I'm going to completely fall apart." "Yeah." They sat in silence for a moment, an unexpected understanding passing between them. Emma felt the shift in the air, the way a wall had crumbled. She wasn't invisible anymore. And judging by the look on Alexander Ashford's face, he wasn't quite as lost as he'd been an hour ago. The morning after their kitchen conversation, Emma wasn't sure what to expect. Part of her wondered if Alexander would retreat back into his shell, embarrassed by his vulnerability. She'd seen it before, people who opened up in moments of crisis, then regretted it in the harsh light of day. But when she came downstairs at 6:15 to start the coffee, she found a handwritten note on the counter. "Emma, thank you for last night. I mean it." It was the first personal acknowledgement she'd received in 7 months. She folded the note carefully and slipped it into her pocket, uncertain why it felt so significant. The days that followed brought subtle changes. Alexander started saying good morning when they passed in the hallway. He thanked her when she brought his coffee. Small things, maybe, but they felt monumental compared to the silence that had come before. On Thursday, she found another note with her paycheck. "I've arranged for you to work from 9 to 5 instead of 6 to 6. You deserve actual hours. Also, I've increased your salary. It should help with your mother's treatment." Emma stared at the number on her new contract and had to sit down. He'd nearly doubled her salary. She wanted to refuse. It felt like too much, like charity, but then she thought about her mother's upcoming bills and swallowed her pride. That evening, she knocked on his office door for the first time ever. "Come in," his voice called. She entered to find him at his standing desk, 3 monitors glowing with code and spreadsheets. He turned, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. "Mr. Ashford." "Alexander," he interrupted. "Please. After I had a breakdown in front of you, I think we can drop the formality." "Alexander," she corrected, the name feeling strange on her tongue. "I wanted to thank you for the salary increase. It's incredibly generous. But I also want to make sure you're not doing this because you feel guilty about." "I'm doing it because you deserve it," he said firmly. "I looked at what we were paying you versus market rate for someone with your experience and qualifications. We were underpaying you by about 30%. This is what you should have been making all along." "Still," Emma said. "Thank you. It means more than you know." He studied her for a moment. "How is your mother doing?" The question surprised her. "She has a treatment session tomorrow, actually. It's why I appreciated the schedule change. I can visit her in the evening now." "Why don't you take tomorrow off entirely?" Alexander suggested. "Paid, obviously. Go be with her." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. And Emma—" He paused. "I called a therapist. First appointment is next week." "You were right. I need help." "That's really good," she said, meaning it. "I'm proud of you." The words slipped out before she could stop them, too familiar for an employer-employee relationship. But Alexander smiled, that same transformative smile from the other night. "Thank you. That actually means a lot." Emma spent the next day at the hospital with her mother, whose spirits had lifted considerably since the new treatment began. Maria Rodriguez had always been a fighter, and seeing her daughter less stressed seemed to energize her. "This boss of yours," Maria said as they sat in the chemo suite, "he sounds different." "He is different," Emma admitted. "Or maybe he was always this person underneath, just buried." "You like him," Maria observed with a mother's intuition. "Mama, no. It's not like that. He's my employer. Mija, I raised you to be honest with yourself. I see your face when you talk about him." Emma busied herself adjusting her mother's blanket. "He's just being kind. Finally. That's all." But later, driving back to the estate, she couldn't stop thinking about Alexander. About the vulnerability in his eyes that night in the kitchen. About how he'd remembered her mother, had cared enough to ask. About the way he looked when he smiled. Sophia's words echoed in her mind, "You deserve to work somewhere where people see you." For the first time in 7 months, Emma felt seen. And it was terrifying. When she returned to work the following Monday, she found Alexander in the kitchen making breakfast, or attempting to. He stood at the stove, spatula in hand, looking frustrated at what appeared to be scrambled eggs. "I thought I'd try cooking," he said sheepishly when he noticed her. "But I'm apparently terrible at it." Emma laughed, moving to take over. "When's the last time you cooked?" "College. Maybe." He stepped aside. "I've had chefs or eaten takeout for basically my entire adult life." "Okay, first lesson, medium-low heat for scrambled eggs, not high. You want them soft and creamy, not rubber." She showed him how to properly scramble eggs while he watched, attentive. It felt surreal, standing side by side in the kitchen with Alexander Ashford, teaching him basic cooking skills. But it also felt natural, easy. "How's your mother?" he asked as she plated the eggs. "Better. The treatment is working." "She was asking about you, actually." "About me?" "I may have mentioned that my previously silent employer is learning to be human again." Alexander laughed, a real laugh that reached his eyes. "That's one way to put it. What did you tell her about me?" "That you're brilliant and complicated and trying," Emma said honestly. "And that you make really terrible scrambled eggs." "Hey, I was getting there," he protested, then grew more serious. "Thank you, Emma, for not giving up on me when I was being impossible." "You weren't impossible. You were hurting." "I'm still hurting," he admitted. "But it feels more manageable now. Less like drowning." They ate breakfast together, talking about small things, his therapy appointment, her mother's progress, a documentary they'd both seen. It was the most normal conversation Emma had had in months, and she realized how much she'd missed normal. As Alexander headed to his office afterward, he paused at the door. "Would you want to have dinner sometime? Not in the dining room with me, eating alone. Actually, together. I'd like to get to know you better. If that's not too weird." Emma's heart raced. "Like, as friends?" "As friends," he confirmed. "Or at least as two people who had a moment of honesty at 3 in the morning and want to see where that goes." "Okay," Emma said, surprised by how much she wanted this. "Yes, I'd like that." His smile could have lit the entire house. They started having dinner together 3 times a week. It began casually, Alexander suggesting they eat the meals Emma prepared together rather than separately. But those dinners became the highlight of both their days. They'd sit in the breakfast nook rather than the formal dining room, and they'd talk. Really talk. Emma learned that Alexander had wanted to be a teacher before he discovered coding. That he played piano but hadn't touched one in years. That his favorite movie was Dead Poets Society, and he could quote it by heart. That he felt guilty about his success, like he didn't deserve it after his parents died. Alexander learned that Emma had studied art history in college but couldn't afford to finish her degree. That she painted in her spare time, small watercolors she sold at local markets. That she'd once dreamed of opening a community art center for underprivileged kids. That she read voraciously and could discuss literature with a depth that surprised him. "You're incredibly smart," he said one evening over homemade pasta. "Why are you working as a housekeeper?" Emma didn't take offense. "Because smart doesn't pay my mother's medical bills. The art world is competitive and doesn't pay well unless you're extremely lucky. Housekeeping is honest work, it pays well here, and it gives me time to paint in the mornings. I'm not ashamed of it." "I didn't mean to suggest you should be," Alexander said quickly. "I just meant you could do anything. Be anything." "So could you," Emma pointed out. "But you're also trapped by circumstances, in a different way. Your company needs you. Your employees depend on you. Your parents' legacy weighs on you. We all have our cages, Alexander. Mine just looks different from yours." He set down his fork, really looking at her. "When did you become wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." He laughed, but there was something vulnerable in his eyes. "I'm paying attention now. Trust me." The shift in their relationship didn't go unnoticed by others. His assistant, Margaret, called one afternoon when Emma was cleaning the living room. "Is Alexander all right?" Margaret asked. "He's been different lately. Calmer. More present in meetings. He actually smiled at someone yesterday." "I think he's working through some things," Emma replied diplomatically. "Well, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We were all worried he was heading for a complete breakdown. The board was even discussing mandatory leave." After Margaret hung up, Emma found herself wondering what exactly they were doing. They were friends, yes. But there was something else beneath the surface, something neither of them had acknowledged. It came to a head on a rainy October evening. Emma had finished her work for the day and was heading upstairs when she passed Alexander's study. The door was open, and she could hear him on the phone, his voice tight with stress. "No, Richard, I understand the investors are concerned, but we're not rushing the product launch. I don't care if it costs us the quarter. We launch when it's ready, not when it's convenient. Because my name is on this company, and I won't release something subpar just to satisfy Wall Street. Then they can vote me out, but I'm not changing my position." He hung up and immediately threw his phone across the room. It hit the wall with a crack. Emma knocked softly on the open door. "Bad call. The board wants to push our new platform launch up by 6 months," Alexander said, his voice strained. "It's not ready. It won't be ready." But they don't care about the product. They care about quarterly earnings and stock prices. "So tell them no." I did. And now I'm the difficult one. The perfectionist who doesn't understand business realities. He slumped in his chair. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm sabotaging my own company. Emma entered the room and sat across from him. "Do you believe the product isn't ready?" "I know it isn't ready." "Then you made the right call. Your reputation is built on quality, not speed." "My reputation is built on success," Alexander countered. "And right now, I'm fighting my own board and probably losing." "You're not losing. You're standing by your principles. That's different." He looked at her, something raw in his expression. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't. I just say what I think is true." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Alexander spoke again, his voice quieter. "I don't know what I'd do without these conversations. Without you. That probably sounds pathetic." "It doesn't," Emma interrupted. "I feel the same way." He stood, moving to the window. The rain created patterns on the glass, streaking the light. "We should probably talk about what's happening here." Emma's heart hammered. "What do you mean?" "Emma." He turned to face her. "I think you know what I mean. This isn't just friendship anymore. At least not for me." She stood too, her legs unsteady. "Alexander, I work for you. This is complicated." "I know. Believe me, I know. I've been trying to ignore it, but—" He moved closer. "I can't stop thinking about you. About these dinners, these conversations. About the way you see me, really see me, not just the billionaire or the CEO, but me. And I think, I hope, you might feel something similar." Emma's mind raced. This was her employer. This could end her job, her stability, her ability to care for her mother. But it could also be something real, something she hadn't expected to find. "I do," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Feel something. But I'm scared. What if this goes wrong? I can't afford to lose this job." "You won't," Alexander said firmly. "Whatever happens between us, your position here is secure. And if you want to stop this conversation right now, we can. We can go back to being just friends, and I swear nothing will change professionally." "But what if I don't want to stop?" Emma asked. The distance between them evaporated. Alexander reached out, cupping her face gently. "Then tell me, because I need to hear you say it." "I don't want to stop," Emma whispered. "I want to see where this goes." He kissed her then, soft and tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Emma melted into it, her hands finding his shoulders, steadying herself against the wave of emotion. When they pulled apart, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "I haven't felt this alive in years." "Me either," Emma admitted. "So what do we do now?" Emma smiled. "I guess we figure it out together." The first few weeks of their relationship felt like a secret world they'd created just for themselves. Alexander would finish work and find Emma painting in the sunroom. They'd cook dinner together, his skills gradually improving. They'd watch movies curled up on the couch, talking until midnight. They'd kiss in doorways and laugh at private jokes. But reality had a way of intruding. The complications started with Margaret, Alexander's assistant, who arrived for a scheduled meeting and found them making breakfast together, Alexander's hand resting casually on Emma's waist. Margaret's eyebrows rose. "Good morning," she said carefully. "Should I come back?" "No, it's fine," Alexander said, but Emma could feel the tension in his body. "We were just finishing up." Later, in his office, Emma could hear Margaret's voice, professionally concerned. "Alexander, I'm not judging, but you need to think about optics. If this becomes public, there will be questions. About power dynamics, about—" "I know," Alexander cut her off. "But this isn't what it looks like. Emma and I, it's real. It's not some cliché. I believe you, Margaret said. But will the board? Will the media? You need to be prepared for this to get messy. Emma stood outside the door, her stomach churning. She hadn't thought about the public aspect, about how it would look. Billionaire boss dates his housekeeper. It was tabloid fodder. It would make Alexander look like a cliché at best, a creep at worst. And Emma, she'd be painted as a gold digger, someone sleeping her way to security. That evening, she brought it up over dinner. I heard Margaret talking to you, she admitted. About optics. Alexander set down his fork. Emma, she's not wrong. If this comes out, it'll be a nightmare. For you professionally, for me personally. People will think I'm using you, or you're taking advantage of me. I don't care what people think. But I do, Emma said. And you should too. You have a company to run, investors to satisfy. I'm a liability. Don't say that. Alexander reached across the table, taking her hand. You're not a liability. You're the best thing in my life right now. That doesn't change reality. Maybe we should. The words caught in her throat. Maybe we should take a step back. Figure out how to do this properly. Properly how? I don't know. Maybe I should quit. Find another job. Then we could date without all the complications. Alexander's grip tightened. No. Absolutely not. You need this job for your mother's treatment. There are other jobs. None that pay as well with benefits this good. Emma, I won't let you sacrifice your mother's health for this. We'll figure something else out. But figuring it out proved more difficult than either anticipated. The board meeting the following week went poorly. Richard Chen, the lead investor, cornered Alexander afterward. I'm hearing rumors, Richard said without preamble, about you and a member of your household staff. Alexander kept his expression neutral. My personal life is my own business. Not when it affects the company. We're in the middle of delicate negotiations for the Series D funding. If this becomes public, it could impact investor confidence. That's ridiculous. Is it? Richard challenged. You're asking for $2 billion. Investors want stability, sound judgment. A CEO dating his housekeeper doesn't exactly project those qualities. Alexander felt rage building. My relationship with Emma has nothing to do with my ability to run this company. Maybe not. But perception matters. I'm advising you, as a friend and as your lead investor, to be very careful here. That night, Alexander was quieter than usual. Emma noticed immediately. What happened? She asked. He told her about the conversation with Richard. Emma felt ice forming in her chest. He's threatening the funding? Not directly. But the implication was clear. Alexander ran his hands through his hair. I hate this. I hate that our relationship is something I have to justify or hide. Maybe he's right, though, Emma said quietly. Maybe this is affecting your judgment. It's not. How do you know? You've completely changed since we started whatever this is. You're less focused on work, you're pushing back against the board more. Because I'm finally thinking clearly, Alexander interrupted. Before you, I was drowning in work, having panic attacks, on the verge of collapse. Now I have balance. Perspective. You've made me a better person, Emma, not a worse CEO. But what if they don't see it that way? What if you lose everything you've built because of me? Then I lose it, Alexander said firmly. But I'm not losing you. The declaration should have warmed her. Instead, it terrified her. Because Emma knew what it was like to lose everything, and she couldn't bear the thought of being responsible for Alexander's fall. The situation came to a head when a gossip blog published a photo. Someone, a landscaper, maybe, or the chef, had taken a picture of Emma and Alexander kissing in the garden. It was blurry, distant, but recognizable. The headline read, Tech Billionaire Alexander Ashford's Secret Romance with Household Staff. The article was cruel, full of speculation and innuendo. It called Emma a gold digger, suggested she'd trapped Alexander, questioned her motives and character. It dug into her background, found her mother's illness, and implied Emma was exploiting a lonely billionaire to pay medical bills. Emma read it on her phone, each word like a knife. Her hands shook. Alexander found her in her room, where she'd retreated after seeing the article. She was packing. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "What I should have done weeks ago," Emma said, fighting tears. "Leaving. This was a mistake, Alexander. I can't be the reason your life falls apart." "My life isn't falling apart. Did you read that article? They called me a predator. Said I seduced you for money. They found out about my mom, about the medical bills. They're making me sound like—" Her voice broke. "I can't do this. I can't watch them tear you apart because of me." Alexander crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. She tried to resist, but he held firm. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "I don't care about the article. I don't care what gossip blogs say. The only thing I care about is you. Us. But your company will survive. Emma, I built Ashford Dynamics because I wanted to create something meaningful. But you know what? I've been so lost in building it that I forgot why I was doing any of it. You reminded me that there's more to life than quarterly earnings and stock prices. That connection, real human connection, matters more than any business success." "Pretty speech," Emma said bitterly. "But will you feel that way when your funding falls through? When your board votes you out?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Because I've already lived the alternative, all the success in the world with no one to share it with. And it almost destroyed me." Emma wanted to believe him. But fear had its claws in her heart. The fallout from the article was swift and brutal. The board called an emergency meeting. Investors started making concerned calls. The media picked up the story, spinning it into a scandal. Alexander Ashford, the boy genius, brought low by an inappropriate relationship with his maid. Emma watched it unfold from the estate, feeling sick. She'd stopped packing but hadn't unpacked either, stuck in limbo. Alexander spent his days in crisis management mode, and she barely saw him. Sophia came to visit, bringing wine and sympathy. "This is my nightmare," Emma confessed, curled up on her bed. "I wanted to be invisible, and now I'm infamous. Everyone knows my name, my mother's illness, everything. And they hate me for it." "They don't hate you," Sophia said. "They hate the idea of you, of someone they think doesn't deserve happiness with someone rich. It's class warfare disguised as concern. Maybe they're right, though. Maybe I don't deserve him. We're from completely different worlds." "Emma Rodriguez, don't you dare," Sophia said fiercely. "You deserve every happiness. You've spent your entire adult life taking care of your mother, sacrificing your dreams, working your ass off. If you found someone who loves you, who sees you, you have every right to that. But at what cost? If he loses his company, then he loses it," Sophia interrupted. "And if your relationship is real, you'll figure it out together. But Emma, you can't make decisions based on fear. You have to fight for what you want." After Sophia left, Emma sat with those words. Fight for what you want. When had she last done that? She'd spent so long in survival mode, taking whatever scraps life offered, that she'd forgotten how to fight for more. She found Alexander in his study at midnight, staring at financial projections. "Hey," she said softly. He looked up, and the exhaustion on his face made her heart ache. "Hey, I thought you were sleeping." "Couldn't. Can we talk?" Alexander closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. Emma sat across from him, gathering her courage. "I've been scared," she admitted. "Scared of what this means, what it could cost you. Scared that I'm not enough, that I don't fit in your world. And part of me wanted to run because running feels safer than fighting." "Emma!" "But I'm done running," she continued, "because Sophia reminded me that I deserve happiness too. And Alexander, you make me happy. Happier than I've been in years. So if you're willing to fight for this, for us, then so am I." Relief flooded his face. "You're staying. I'm staying. But we do this right. No more hiding, no more secrets. If we're together publicly. Consequences and all. The board won't like it." "Then the board needs to deal with it," Emma said firmly. "You're the founder, the majority shareholder. They can't fire you. They can make my life very difficult. And you can handle it. You're brilliant, Alexander. You built a billion-dollar company from nothing. You can navigate this." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen in days. "When did you become so fierce?" "About 5 minutes ago. I'm still figuring it out." Alexander stood and pulled her into his arms. "I love you," he said, the words coming easy and natural. "I know it's fast and complicated and probably crazy, but I love you." Emma's heart soared. "I love you too." They kissed, and it felt like a promise. A commitment to weather whatever storms came. The next morning, Alexander called a press conference. Emma stood backstage, her heart pounding, as he addressed the media. "I'm here to address the recent speculation about my personal life," Alexander began, his voice steady. "Yes, I'm in a relationship with Emma Rodriguez. Emma came to work at my home 7 months ago, and she became the most important person in my life. Not because of any professional obligation, but because she's brilliant, kind, thoughtful, and genuine in a way that's rare in my world." The reporters started shouting questions, but Alexander held up a hand. "I know what you're thinking. That this is inappropriate, that there's a power imbalance, that I'm making a mistake. But here's what I want you to understand. Emma didn't pursue me. If anything, I pursued her. She saw me at my lowest point and showed me kindness when she had every reason not to. She challenged me to be better. And yes, we fell in love. That doesn't diminish my ability to run my company, and it doesn't make her a gold digger. It makes us two people who found something real in an unexpected place." He paused, looking directly at the cameras. "I've spent my adult life building Ashford Dynamics. It's been my entire identity. But recently, I realized I'd lost myself in the process. Emma helped me remember who I am beyond my company. She reminded me that life is about more than success. It's about connection, meaning, love. If that makes me less attractive to investors, so be it. But I won't apologize for finding happiness." The room erupted in questions, but Alexander simply walked off stage. He found Emma and took her hand. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," she confirmed. They left the press conference together, hand in hand, facing the cameras and the world. The aftermath was complicated. Some investors did pull out. The board remained skeptical. But others rallied around them. The story, once they controlled the narrative, became less about scandal and more about human connection. Articles started appearing with headlines like, "Billionaire chooses love over fortune," and "The romance that saved Alexander Ashford." More importantly, the company stabilized. Alexander's honesty about his struggles with mental health, his commitment to work-life balance, and his refusal to compromise his values resonated with younger investors and clients. Ashford Dynamics became known not just for innovation but for authentic leadership. 6 months later, Emma stood in the Ashford estate garden, their garden now, watching the sunset. She'd officially changed her role from housekeeper to Alexander's partner in every sense. She still worked, but differently. She'd enrolled back in school to finish her art history degree, taking online classes. She'd started a foundation, funded by Alexander, to provide art education to underprivileged children. Her mother's cancer was in remission. Alexander came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different life is now compared to a year ago," Emma said. "How I thought I was invisible, and now I'm so visible it's almost overwhelming." "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Emma turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Not for a second." "You?" "Never," he said firmly. "You saved my life, Emma Rodriguez. In every way a person can be saved. You saved mine too, Emma replied. We saved each other. He kissed her as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere in the house, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from her mother, asking about dinner plans. In Alexander's pocket, his own phone held messages from his sister, excited about visiting next month. Their lives were full now, of family, connection, purpose, love. It hadn't been easy getting here. The road had been complicated, messy, public in ways neither of them enjoyed. But it had been worth it. Because sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest acts: a sandwich left on a desk, a text at 3 in the morning, the courage to see and be seen. Emma had once been invisible to Alexander Ashford. Now, she was his whole world. And he was hers. In the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Epilogue. 2 years later, Emma stood in front of the ribbon at the grand opening of the Rodriguez Ashford Community Arts Center. Her mother sat in the front row, healthy and beaming. Sophia stood beside her, serving as the center's program director. Alexander squeezed Emma's hand as she prepared to cut the ribbon. Nervous, he whispered. Terrified, she admitted. But the good kind of terrified. You've got this. Emma looked out at the crowd. Neighborhood kids already excited to take classes, local artists ready to teach, reporters covering the event, and most importantly, Alexander, looking at her with absolute pride and love. She thought about that text message 2 years ago, kitchen. Please. 2 words that had changed everything. That had led them here, to this moment, to this life they'd built together. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, Emma began, her voice steady. This center represents a dream I've had since college, a place where art is accessible to everyone, regardless of their background or financial situation. I couldn't have made it real without my partner, Alexander, who believed in this dream as much as I did. She glanced at him, and he smiled that smile that still made her heart skip. But more than that, Emma continued, this center represents something else, the power of seeing each other. Really seeing each other, past the roles we play and the walls we build. Because sometimes the most important connections happen when we're willing to look past surfaces and find the humanity underneath. She cut the ribbon to applause, and children rushed past into the bright, welcoming space filled with art supplies and possibility. Later, as they drove home together, Alexander reached over and took Emma's hand. Your speech was beautiful, he said. I meant every word. I know. That's what made it beautiful. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. Have I told you today that I love you? At least 3 times. But I never get tired of hearing it. Good. Because I never get tired of saying it. Emma smiled, watching the Connecticut landscape blur past. She thought about visibility and invisibility, about how sometimes you have to be unseen before you can truly be seen. About how the best love stories aren't always the easy ones. Sometimes they're the ones you have to fight for, the ones that challenge you to be braver than you thought possible. Hey, Alexander, she said softly. Yeah. Thank you. For that text message. For everything that came after. He glanced at her, his eyes warm. Thank you for showing up. For staying. For teaching me what it means to actually live. They drove home to their shared life, to their shared future, 2 people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way and decided to build something real. Something lasting. Something that had started with a simple truth. Everyone deserves to be seen. And everyone deserves to love and be loved in return.